What if I told you that the dream of starting fresh in a new country could become a nightmare for many? Immigration laws are tightening worldwide, and more countries are sending immigrants packing than ever before. From Europe to Asia, governments are closing borders and ramping up deportations. Curious about which countries are leading this trend and why? Stick around as we dive into the top 10 countries kicking out immigrants in 2025 and discover the shocking reasons behind these decisions. 1. The United States. The United States has ramped up its deportation policies in 2025, pushing immigration reform to new extremes. Over 300,000 deportations were recorded last year, targeting both undocumented migrants and visa overstayers. The shift stems from political pressures and concerns over national security, crime rates, and the economy. The focus is particularly on immigrants from Central America, such as Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, who cross the southern border in search of better opportunities. Unfortunately, many are deported before they can settle, citing lack of documentation. Recent proposed constitutional changes even target children born to undocumented immigrants, challenging long-held interpretations of citizenship. Why such strict measures? Advocates claim it's to protect jobs and national security. Critics argue it fuels division and punishes vulnerable communities. For many, the American dream is quickly becoming a fleeting hope. 2. France. France, known as the Land of Liberty, has become a hotspot for immigration debates. Deportations rose by 20% in 2025, targeting migrants from North African nations like Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. These immigrants often fill critical labor shortages, yet they're increasingly viewed as burdens due to rising unemployment and cultural tensions. The French government has passed stricter immigration policies, making it harder for undocumented immigrants to seek asylum. Deportations disproportionately target North African men, with many citing challenges in integration as justification for these actions. France's immigrant labor force remains essential, yet the tension between dependency and rejection continues to grow. 3. Italy. Italy has taken significant steps to address its immigration policies. Deportations have increased by 30%, with over 20,000 migrants sent back to their home countries in 2024 alone. Many of these individuals crossed the Mediterranean on dangerous boats, escaping conflict zones in Africa and the Middle East. Public sentiment around immigration has shifted dramatically in Italy. Once seen as a welcoming nation, 71% of Italians now support stricter deportation laws, citing concerns over jobs, housing, and social services. A new fast-tracking mechanism has been introduced to expedite deportation cases for undocumented workers. 4. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, heavily reliant on migrant labor, has paradoxically become one of the strictest nations for deportation. In 2025, over 150,000 migrants were deported, with the majority hailing from India, Pakistan, and various African nations. Migrants often take on labor-intensive jobs in construction and domestic work, jobs that Saudis typically avoid. Despite the demand for this workforce, Saudi Arabia's Saudization policies aim to replace migrant labor with local workers to address national unemployment. The situation is exacerbated by economic fluctuations, with migrants being deported en masse after major construction projects end. For instance, many workers are sent back as soon as their contracts expire, often without notice or fair compensation. A unique aspect of Saudi deportation laws is the runaway resident policy. If a migrant overstays their visa or works outside their official permit, they are labeled as a runaway and deported. Employers are often held financially responsible for these deportations, creating an additional layer of complexity. While Saudi Arabia continues to modernize, its strict immigration policies remain a point of contention for human rights organizations. 5. Turkey. Turkey has seen a staggering 70% increase in deportations, with over 100,000 migrants expelled in 2024 alone. The majority are refugees fleeing conflict zones in Afghanistan and Syria, seeking safety and stability. Turkey, however, is grappling with high youth unemployment and economic strain, prompting stricter immigration policies. While Turkey has historically been a haven for refugees, hosting over 4 million displaced individuals, public sentiment has shifted. Migrants are increasingly seen as a strain on the economy, and nationalist movements have called for their removal. To fast-track deportations, Turkey has implemented expedited processing systems and border security measures. Most deportees are those without proper documentation or those caught working without permits. Despite Turkey's role as a bridge between East and West, its hospitality is waning under the weight of economic and social challenges. 6. The United Kingdom post-Brexit. The United Kingdom has ramped up deportations to enforce stricter immigration policies. In 2024, over 8,000 people were deported, including individuals who had lived in the country for decades. Migrants from India, Pakistan, Poland, and Romania are among the most affected. The UK's Home Office has adopted a zero-tolerance stance, targeting visa overstayers, undocumented workers, and even long-term residents with minor legal infractions. Public sentiment remains divided, with around 50% of citizens supporting tighter immigration controls. However, critics argue that deportations often tear families apart and disproportionately impact minority communities. The government has also proposed measures to reduce the rights of undocumented migrants, such as limiting their access to healthcare and housing. While the UK seeks to balance its labor needs with immigration controls, its deportation policies continue to draw criticism for their perceived harshness. 7. Australia, known for its strict immigration policies, has seen a 25% rise in deportations, with 10,000 people sent back in 2024 alone. Migrants overstaying their visas or working without authorization face immediate removal. The irony is that Australia, a nation built on immigration, now enforces some of the harshest deportation measures. In 2024, a new bill granted the Australian government the authority to pay third countries to accept deported migrants. This controversial policy has placed over 80,000 individuals at risk of removal. Additionally, the government has ramped up border patrols and fast-tracked deportation proceedings to deter unauthorized arrivals. Australia's deportation policies have faced criticism for being inhumane, particularly as many migrants come from conflict zones or economically disadvantaged regions. However, the government maintains that these measures are necessary to protect national interests and ensure job opportunities for its citizens. While Australia remains a dream destination for many, its approach to immigration has made it one of the toughest places for undocumented migrants. 8. Germany. Germany, often seen as a haven for migrants, has shifted its stance in recent years. Deportations increased by 15% in 2024, affecting over 12,000 individuals. Most deportees are young men from regions like the Middle East, often asylum seekers whose applications were denied. Germany's immigration policies have become more restrictive due to rising public concern over social integration and resource allocation. A significant portion of the population supports stricter immigration laws, with surveys indicating that nearly 70% of Germans favor more control over migration. To address these concerns, Germany has introduced fast-tracked deportation processes for those without valid documentation. Despite these measures, Germany remains committed to attracting skilled labor. In December 2024, the government reworked its Skilled Immigration Act to lower barriers for professionals from non-EU countries. This dual approach highlights Germany's challenge, balancing the need for a skilled workforce with public demand for tighter immigration controls. 9. Japan, often viewed as a homogeneous society, has traditionally maintained strict immigration controls. In 2024, deportations rose by 20%, with thousands of undocumented workers and visa overstayers being sent back. Migrants from neighboring countries like China, Vietnam, and the Philippines are the most affected, despite filling vital roles in Japan's aging labor market. Japan's immigration policies are deeply tied to its cultural identity and societal norms. Public sentiment leans heavily towards preserving the country's homogeneity, leading to minimal tolerance for undocumented migration. Recent government initiatives include increasing deportations and tightening visa requirements, particularly for temporary workers. However, Japan's aging population and shrinking workforce create a paradox. While stricter deportation policies address short-term political concerns, they also exacerbate labor shortages in sectors like healthcare, construction, and agriculture. Efforts to attract skilled foreign workers exist, but these programs remain limited, leaving Japan in a challenging position as it tries to balance economic demands with its immigration stance. 10. Mexico. Mexico, traditionally known as a transit country for migrants heading to the United States, has become increasingly strict with its immigration policies. In 2024, deportations surged by 35%, affecting over 150,000 individuals, primarily migrants from Central American nations such as Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. These migrants often flee poverty, violence, and instability in search of safety or better opportunities. Mexico's government has ramped up border enforcement under pressure from the United States to curb migration. In addition, Mexico has increased deportation operations in its southern border regions, targeting those entering illegally. Critics argue that Mexico is acting as an unofficial extension of U.S. immigration policies, with many migrants intercepted before reaching northern borders. While Mexico has a reputation for its vibrant culture and hospitable people, its immigration policies have faced backlash from human rights organizations. They highlight that deportees are often sent back to dangerous situations without proper due process. Despite these challenges, Mexico continues to navigate its dual role as both a migrant transit route and a country dealing with its internal immigration issues. 11. India, with a population of over 1.4 billion, has seen a dramatic surge in deportations, increasing by 50% in 2024. Most of the affected individuals are migrants from neighboring Bangladesh and Myanmar. Rising unemployment and political pressure have driven India to implement stricter border controls and deportation measures. The government has been vocal about addressing illegal immigration, particularly in border states like Assam, where tensions with migrants have escalated over the years. Efforts to create a National Register of Citizens, NRC, have further complicated the situation, as individuals unable to prove their citizenship face the risk of being declared stateless. India's challenges lie in balancing its economic needs with its large migrant population. Many undocumented workers fill essential roles in agriculture, construction, and domestic work. However, rising nationalism and concerns over resource allocation have fueled stricter immigration enforcement. As India continues to deport thousands, questions about human rights and the treatment of marginalized communities remain at the forefront of the debate. Russia, the strict immigration stance. Russia's immigration policies have grown increasingly strict over the years, reflecting a cold and unrelenting stance. Despite facing a population crisis fueled by a declining birth rate, an aging workforce, and the impacts of war, Russia has been intensifying its deportation efforts. Recent reports reveal that the country has deported nearly 900,000 immigrants in recent years, a 37% increase in deportations over the last 2 years alone. Immigrants in Russia make up about 8% of the total population, and many fill critical roles in construction, manufacturing, and agriculture. However, this has not softened the government's approach. Public sentiment largely supports these stringent measures, with about 60% of Russians advocating for stricter immigration controls. In certain regions, the number of undocumented immigrants is estimated to be 10 to 20 times higher than legal residents, further fueling these policies. Most immigrants in Russia originate from countries near its southern borders, such as Central Asia, the Caucasus region, China, Afghanistan, and even Vietnam. Migrant workers often arrive to fill labor shortages, yet nationalist sentiments and tightening policies leave them vulnerable to deportation. The harsh stance on illegal immigration reflects broader challenges in the country, where economic difficulties and demographic shifts are driving these drastic measures. Russia's actions exemplify how immigration enforcement can clash with the nation's need for labor. While stricter controls aim to address undocumented migration, they also risk exacerbating labor shortages, especially in industries heavily reliant on migrant workers. The broader implications of these policies remain to be seen, particularly as Russia grapples with its demographic and economic challenges. This rigid approach continues to spark debates both domestically and internationally about the balance between national security, economic needs, and human rights. Immigration policies are evolving globally, often reflecting economic and political pressures. While these countries enforce stricter deportation laws, the ripple effects, from labor shortages to humanitarian crises, are undeniable. What do you think about these trends? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights. See you in the next video.